In history, there are many walls, like the Great Wall of China, but none as infamous as the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall was made by the USSR to separate their portion of Berlin from the other side, controlled by French, American, and British forces. At the end of World War II, the Allied powers split Germany into four areas. As agreed by the Potsdam Conference, each was controlled by the United States, the UK, France, and the USSR. The same was done with Germany's capital city, Berlin. The relationship between the Soviet Union and the other three Allied powers quickly broke down. As a result, the cooperative nature of the USSR control turned dark. One of the best-known incidents was the Berlin blockade in June of 1948, during which the USSR stopped all supplies from reaching West Berlin. When East Germany became its own country in 1949, it was under the direct influence of the USSR and a communist society was established. The economy of East Germany collapsed and personal freedoms were severely damaged. Most of East Germany was soon secured except in the Berlin area. Many people in the East Berlin side wanted to leave, and since Berlin was the only way to the west, they went through there. Rumors had spread that something might happen to tighten the border of East and West Berlin. No one was expecting the speed nor the absoluteness of the Berlin Wall. Midnight, August 12th through the 13th, 1961. Trucks with soldiers and construction workers came through East Berlin. While most Berliners were sleeping, these people began tearing up streets that entered into West Berlin. They dug holes to stop vehicles, put up concrete posts, and strung barbed wire across the border between the East and the West. Telephone wires between the East and West Berlin were also cut, and railroad lines were blocked. Although most of the border between East and West consisted of layers of protective measures, there were little more than a handful of official openings across the Berlin Wall. This was a big impact on both East and West Berlin. This wall divided families, and many East Berlins were cut from their jobs. These checkpoints were for the infrequent use of officials and others with special permission to cross the border. The total length of the Berlin Wall was 96 miles. It wrapped around West Berlin, entirely cutting it off from the rest of East Germany. The Berlin Wall did prevent the majority of East Germans from emigrating to the West, but it did not deter everyone. During the history of the Berlin Wall, it is estimated that about 5,000 people made it safely across. The wall was intended to have 9 borderline crossings, which would allow visits from West Berliners, other West Germans, Allied personnel to East Berlin, and others that each border would allow. It came down to where guards were given shoot to kill instructions, to shoot anyone who attempted to cross. Many died by either being shot or other things like jumping out from buildings along with the wall. But the fall of the Berlin Wall happened nearly as suddenly as it rose. There have been many signs that the communist bloc was weakening, but the East German communist leaders insisted that East Germany just needed a moderate change rather than a drastic revolution. East German citizens did not agree. Later in the year of 1989, there were protests against the wall, which was the start of the East German peaceful revolution. Suddenly, in the evening of November 9th, 1989, an East German government official by the name of Gunter Schabowski announced the phrase, "Permanent relocations can be done through all border checkpoints between the GDR." This baffled many East Germans who were in shock. Were the borders really open? East Germans tentatively approached the border and indeed found that the border guards were letting people cross, even though they were pretty much forced to, as they could no longer hold back the crowd of East Germans who had gathered that day. The demolition of the Berlin Wall began on the 13th of June, 1990, and it was finished in 1992. Though the wall was gone, it took till October the 3rd, 1990, which is almost a year after the fall of the Berlin Wall, did East and West Germany finally reunite. There are still some parts of the wall that remain today, and they stand as a reminder of the Cold War. The wall stood and still stands as a symbol of the freedom or lack thereof under communism. The compromise not only helped bring Berliners together once more, it also symbolizes the Cold War and divide between the communist Soviet bloc and the Western capitalist democratic bloc. It stands as a suppression of human rights.